Welcome to the NCSL Conducting 50 State Research webinar. It is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Pepper Sturm of the Legislative Council Bureau in Nevada and RACSS Chair. Mr. Sturm, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Pepper Sturm, the Chair of Research and Committee Staff Section, known in the acronym world as RACS. I'm the Deputy Research Director for the Legislative Council Bureau here in Nevada. I'm happy to report that we have more than 58 participants signed up for this from 30 different states for today's webinar. This e-learning format is a first for RACS. As many of you know, RACS and the other NCSL staff sections will typically meet yearly to provide professional development training opportunities for staff. Due to the budget difficulties faced by many of our states and the travel restrictions that were put into place, RACS and several other staff sections were forced to cancel our meetings this year. We probably will not be meeting again next year as well, RACS that is. However, these barriers do not stop the need for high-quality professional development. To meet this need, NCSL offered each of the staff sections the opportunity to apply for a $1,000 grant for an e-learning proposal. After discussing this with the RACS directors, we came up with the format and topic for today's first ever RACS webinar. You will notice that the topic of this webinar is a skills-based issue that has a broad appeal. Everyone needs to aspire to proficiency, especially in this topic. The skills we will learn about today will be useful to senior level staff as well as to those just beginning their careers. At this time, I would like to turn things over to the RACS Vice Chair, Mark Mitchell. Mark is the committee staff administrator for the local government committee with Kentucky's Legislative Research Commission. And Mark will introduce our speaker for this webinar.
Thanks, Pepper. Cheryl Nyberg is a reference librarian at the University of Washington Gallagher Law Library in Seattle. She helps law students, professors, attorneys, and members of the public find legal documents and information. Through articles, books, professional activities, and presentations, she works to improve and expand public access to government and legal information. Ms. Nyberg is the author or co-author of more than 20 books, including the subject compilations of State Law's Bibliography Series, 1984 to date, State Administrative Law Bibliography, Print and Electronic Sources in 2000, and the Washington Legal Researcher's Desk Book 3rd edition in 2002. In 2009, she received the Best New Product Award from the American Association of Law Libraries for the subject compilations of State Law's database on Hein Online. She has given numerous presentations on legal research, the Internet, and website design to groups such as the Australian Institute of Judicial Administration, the California Judicial Administration Conference, the National Association for Court Management, the National Center for State Courts, and the National Conference of State Legislatures. Ms. Nyberg received her library degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Ms. Nyberg, if you're ready.
Hi, I'm virtually delighted to be with you today to talk about the subject of conducting 50-state research, specifically how to find 50-state surveys of laws on specific subjects. For more than 20 years, this has been an area of specialty of mine. I'd like to review the organization of today's presentation. First of all, so that we're all on the same page, I'd like to briefly review types of 50-state law surveys. Then I'll describe the sources where you're most likely to find these 50-state surveys. I'll identify shortcuts, the fastest ways you can identify a state law survey on a specific topic. Then I'll dramatically uncover the secret search terms specifically for locating online surveys that contain statutory citations. And these include both free websites and commercial databases. Then I'll identify frequent producers and publishers of 50-state surveys and offer a couple of hints about updating surveys. I'll be happy to take your questions at the end of the presentation. And if you have questions that you'd like to record as the presentation is in progress, you can use the chat feature, We'll be monitoring the questions that come in through this program, particularly for anything that you find unclear or confusing. Then we can answer those questions. I can answer those questions as we go along. So here we go. First of all, types of state surveys. One of the most abundant categories of state law surveys are those that include in a footnote the statutory citations to all of the laws that deal with a specific issue. These are often found in law review articles. Another category are state law surveys that compare elements or aspects of specific laws. Tables are often used to deliver this type of content. Another category of state law surveys briefly describe the nature of the state laws. And a fourth type actually reproduce either parts of or the full text of the laws on the specific topic. Sometimes it seems to me like there are millions of state law surveys. In fact, there are generally thousands. In any given year, I find between 500 and 700 new state law surveys. Over time, that total has reached almost 20,000. I'm interested in all of them, but you're interested in one. Generally, that one perfect survey, that bright, shiny new survey that's right on your topic with just the right bits of information. So how can the techniques that I've developed to find state law surveys on all topics help you find one survey on a specific topic? First, you need to know the territory. The vast body of legal information can be a cold and formidable place, and what you can easily find on the surface is just the tip of the iceberg. Often you need to look for that information that's below the tip of the iceberg, looking beneath the obvious sources to find an even more vast universe of harder to find material. So it helps to know the territory, the lay of the land. Who assembles these surveys? Where are they published? And what forms do they take? Here's the territory that we'll be focusing on today. First of all, articles, specifically law review articles. After all, it is the legal community who's most concerned about the actual language of the statute. And law review articles are the single most prolific sources of 50-state surveys. In fact, comparing state laws on a specific topic is a relatively common law review task. If you think about the people who write these law reviews, principally law professors and students, they have the time and the resources to undertake projects of this nature. Some titles in law review articles are obvious tip-offs to the fact that they might contain a 50-state survey. For instance, tax-exempt hospitals and community benefits, a review of state reporting requirements. Another one, Mama's Baby, Daddy's Maybe, a state-by-state survey of surrogacy laws and their disparate gender impact. However, most law review titles aren't so wonderfully suggestive. Books, yes, books are still fertile fields for state law surveys. Later in the presentation, I'll mention a handful of publishers responsible for large numbers of surveys. Titles like Multi-State Tax Guide to Financial Institutions or Summary of State Law Requirements Addressing Language Needs in Healthcare are illustrative of the type of books that you might find state law surveys in. Court cases and briefs submitted by attorneys often cite to state laws. For example, the U.S. Supreme Court recently decided a case on gun control, District of Columbia versus Heller. Several of the amicus briefs filed in that case contained 50 state law surveys on firearms registration, the carrying of concealed weapons, and bans on assault weapons. Government publications from both federal and state agencies often contain surveys. Consider the Department of Transportation's Summary of State Speed Laws or the Labor Department's Comparison of State Unemployment Laws as examples. Loose leaf services from Commerce Clearinghouse and other publishers have long been reliable sources of comparative state information. In particular, CCH has published the Aviation Law Reporter and State Unfair Trade Practices that include state law surveys. Increasingly, these sources have moved online. They're either available on LexisNexis or Westlaw, or they're on the platform set up by their individual publishers. And databases, commercial databases of all sorts, continue to proliferate. In fact, many web-only sources have sprung up to compete with established providers. Two of these examples are Healthcare Select, U.S. state laws, and a separate one called Compliance Aid with labor-related materials. And of course, Lexis and Westlaw don't rest on their laurels. They continually add new titles and subjects, particularly as their parent companies gobble up other publishers and legal information providers. And the web has offered us a wealth of new information sources, and perhaps these are among the easiest to find. All you need is a good search engine, say Google, anyone? And some savvy search terms to land a recent survey. So that's the territory, and with so much territory to cover, how can we conduct our research effectively? What shortcuts can we take to melt down that iceberg so that we can deliver great results with minimum effort? As Mark kindly mentioned, I've been involved in a set of books called The Subject Compilations of State Laws. This series has been identifying state law compilations in a wide variety of sources covering the 1960s to date, with hundreds of subjects and thousands of cross-references. We're currently at our 23rd volume, and we're still publishing annually. And for 2 years now, we've been available on Hein Online as a searchable database. I hope that some of you are familiar with this source, either in the print world or in the online environment. What I frequently have to remind law students is that it's a bibliography. It points you to sources that analyze, cite, compare, and describe the state laws on hundreds of subjects. It is not itself a state law survey, but a guide to those. Just briefly, for those of you who might not have experienced the searchable database on Hein Online, it contains the full content of the 23-volume set. It's searchable by things like the subject headings and the cross-reference terms that I've assigned, the journals in which the compilations have been published and book titles, the names of cases, the names of courts, and the individuals or organizations responsible for the compilations. You can also choose to do a keyword search, which is a single word. So for instance, if you wanted to find sources that talk about changes in eminent domain law since the Supreme Court decision in City of New London versus Kelo, you could do a keyword search for the word Kelo and identify those articles. You can also browse the subject to try to identify the correct subject heading for the issue that you're interested in. And you'll see that there's a collection of external links which go out to sites that have a large number of state law surveys on specific topics. It's no surprise that the National Conference of State Legislatures is on that list. In fact, NCSL is the single richest source of both print and online 50 state law surveys. You folks are doing a great job with the information that you make available to everyone through your website, and I'm very grateful for the wonderful state law compilations that are available at the NCSL site. So if we think about searching in the online world, as I mentioned, both commercial databases and free websites, specifically for 50 state law surveys with statutory citations. What I call the secret search is actually no great secret at all. It combines the statutory abbreviations for the names of the codes. These are abbreviations that are taken from the Blue Book, a uniform system of citation, which is the Bible of legal citation in legal writing. Any combination of these statutory abbreviations is likely to result in a 50-state survey. This strategy works both in commercial databases, Lexis, Westlaw, and others, as well as web search engines like Bing, Plessy, and Google. In addition, if you use what are called the proximity connectors that Lexis and Westlaw and other advanced search engines provide, you can get greater precision in the recall of state law surveys, and we'll see an illustration of this shortly. If you're looking for free sources on the web, these search terms come in handy, and I'll advise you that it's often useful to try putting these statutory abbreviations in different orders because they result in remarkably different results, and also to try more than one search engine. It's sometimes a mistake to begin and end with Google. Google is the first place I go, and is probably the first place many of you go. But it's not the only search engine, and it doesn't index everything on the web. No search engine does. So try multiple searches on multiple search engines. I'm going to spend a little time looking at the 50-state surveys on Lexis and Westlaw because they are major sources for these types of materials. So since I just mentioned that law review articles are among the most prolific sources of 50-state surveys, I've chosen to search the Journals and Law Reviews database within Westlaw. I'm in the Terms and Connector search, and you see that the first part of the search has my statutory abbreviations within the same paragraph. This is an illustration of the use of those proximity connectors. I'm telling the computer that I want all of these terms to appear within the same paragraph. And then I'm also requiring anything retrieved to have the phrase security freeze within 100 words of my statutory citation. And because I want only the latest publications on this topic, only the latest articles, I've restricted my search to the last 3 years. Also, I know that this topic of security freeze is something that is relatively new. There's been a lot of legislative action in this area, so I'm going to focus on things that are fairly recent. This is an example of one of the items retrieved by that type of search. You see in the footnotes these cluster of statutory citations. In fact, it's this type of cluster that I look for when I'm looking for compilations for my book. I physically flip through all of the recent issues of all of the law school law reviews and all of the other English language law reviews my library subscribes to. I look for these statutory citations in clusters, and after 20 years, it's still pretty easy to do. Time-consuming, but easy. Since I'm using an online source that also contains the text of state laws, we see that those citations are hyperlinked to the full text of the law. So even though I might want something beyond just statutory citations, I can use the power of a resource like this to go from the citations to the full text of individual laws. So the next screenshot shows the text of the California law on a security freeze on credit reports. Westlaw has an option called Results Plus, where they show you additional information that relates to the statute. So you see that there's a red T-site flag on this statute, meaning that there's some negative treatment. Perhaps it's under review. Perhaps the court has ruled on its constitutionality. That's one of the Results Plus you see. But on the left-hand side near the bottom under statutes, there's an indication that there's a 50-state survey on this topic. So I've started in law reviews. I found an article that included a cluster of statutory citations. Looking at one of those citations led me to the fact that Westlaw has an additional state law survey exactly on my topic. So if I didn't know about the fact that there's a surveys database on Westlaw, that would have been one indication to me that there's this wealth of other material available on Westlaw. So it's called the surveys database. And it's a database just like any other on Westlaw. You can do a terms and connectors search for it. Both Lexis and Westlaw have been building collections of 50-state surveys for the past 3 or 4 years. Within this database, you also have the option of looking at the table of contents, or the TOCs. This lays out the major subject categories that are present in this database, from bankruptcy to utilities and telecommunications. The plus sign next to a category indicates that there's more content within that category. Then you get the expanded table of contents, which identifies the individual state law compilations. A topic like employment has many, many compilations underneath it, state law surveys on a wide variety of topics, including things that are kind of hot topics now, like verification of work status or job applicant credit checks. leave to participate in jury service or other civic duties. The broader your subject interest is, the more likely it is that you'll find one or several state law compilations when you expand the subject categories. This allows you the fullest view of all the individual state law surveys that are available. When you click on one of these surveys, you first get what I call the native format of Westlaw's surveys. They actually give you two, and the first one that you get when you click to it includes a prefatory paragraph, sometimes two, describing the scope of the state law survey, and beneath that, what you see in the little expanded window is a state-by-state list of statutory citations along with the section title. And then, of course, you see that these statutory sections are hyperlinked to go directly into the language of the statute. The other format that's available in the Westlaw surveys is a PDF document, a portable document format, which is a snapshot of a document, and most of these contain tables. These surveys are done by Westlaw attorneys, people who work for Westlaw. Westlaw used to contract with another organization, and they had some older surveys from that other organization in the surveys database. Those have since been removed, and the Westlaw reference attorneys have created new or updated guides to specific statutes. So these are done by West employees. These tables are useful for people who kind of want to see how the states compare at a glance. You notice that they don't contain hypertext links to the full text of the statute. You get that in the native format. Of course, I can't mention Westlaw without talking about LexisNexis, their competitor. And of course, LexisNexis has its own collection of 50 state surveys. This is the view of the database name from the directory, which is how I often begin doing a search. Just like in Westlaw, you can search both the table of contents or the full text of the document. You can also browse the table of contents, again, just like you can in Westlaw. Oh, first of all, here's the full table of contents. You'll see many of the same subjects are covered, but there is some variety in the subjects that are covered by both of these sources. The expanded table of contents then gives you the name of the individual publications along with their date of currency and a brief description. This is a little more information than you get from the Westlaw expanded table of contents. The $ at the end of the link, the end of the title, indicates that if you're going to print this, you'll be printing it on your own printer. For some reason unknown to me, neither Lexis nor Westlaw printers can handle PDF documents. I think it's just a matter of making them do it. We certainly print PDF documents as well as Word documents and spreadsheets on the printers in our library and probably in your institution too. But that's just an indication that you're going to have to pay to print that on your own computer. The format of the Lexis surveys is almost a hybrid of what you get on Westlaw. Here you actually get an Excel spreadsheet with statutory citations that are hyperlinked into the full text of the statutes on Lexis. The subject matter, again, is actually the titles of the individual sections. And since this is a spreadsheet, once you bring it up into Excel, you can modify it in any way you want. You can add additional statutory citations. You can add additional information about the subject matter. You can modify this table in any way you choose. Following one of the links from a table in the state law surveys in Lexis, you also get a hint, just as we did when we looked at Westlaw. When we look at a statute that has been the subject of a 50-state survey, in the notes field, there's an indication that there is a 50-state survey within LexisNexis. And you can then click to that to go directly into the survey. So both Lexis and Westlaw give you several ways to find 50-state surveys. Even if you start in the law reviews, you can loop around from a law review to an individual state citation, look at the results plus or in the notes field, and identify or discover the fact that there's a 50-state survey within that database. I spent some time talking about the state law surveys on Lexis and Westlaw because they're plentiful, they cover a wide variety of topics, and they link to the full text laws. That's often important if, for whatever reason, the information you get from the table formats on these services are insufficient for your needs. The ability to just follow links to go directly into the full text and then make your own choices about what information you want to extract or summarize is really very handy. I'd like to compare some of the aspects of the state law surveys on Lexis and Westlaw. First of all, Westlaw has the edge when it comes to the number of surveys. They started building their surveys collection about a year before Lexis. And Westlaw also contains dozens of state law surveys from Richard Leiter's National Survey of State Laws. The company that owns Westlaw also owns Gale, which publishes the National Survey of State Laws. So Thomson Reuters owns two companies. They've merged the content in the Westlaw database. Lexis, by comparison, has the edge when it comes to the range of legal authority that are included in their surveys. They include constitutions, codes, regulations, executive orders, sometimes administrative decisions in all one survey. Westlaw has separate surveys for statutory information and for regulations, although they do give you information that the fact that there is a corresponding survey. They have not merged the codes and the regulations together. They have different formats, the spreadsheets in Lexis and the citation lists and PDF formats in Westlaw. What works for you will depend perhaps on what you have access to and what your ultimate needs are for the 50-state surveys. In addition, both of them offer some unique features. For instance, Lexis has a category of multi-jurisdictional surveys by topic with analysis, which are much lengthier than their regular surveys. They provide tables comparing not just the statutes and the regulations, but also controlling cases on a topic. Westlaw has a feature called Survey Builder, which allows you to create unique surveys based on specific elements of laws in which you're interested. So it's kind of a create your own survey from the information that Westlaw provides. I haven't had the opportunity to work with this specifically because it's not a service that's offered under the academic contract. Your access to these surveys or to some of these other features may depend on your contract with these information providers as well. Of course, Lexis and Westlaw aren't the only game in town. CCH has their web platform, a new one called Impella Connect, and it offers a lot of the same state law surveys that their print publications did. So for instance, if you look at some of the practice tools, I've underscored some of their what they call smart charts, sales and use tax, product liability, blue sky laws. They also offer some state law summaries in some of their other products. So there's the state laws quick reference smart chart dealing with advertising law, another one on unfair and deceptive trade, consumer credit, franchising, and other topics. Because CCH is now owned by Wolters Kluwer, some of the publications from related publishers, for instance Aspen, are also part of the CCH Impella Connect platform. The Tort Law Desk Reference is one of those sources that's a cover-to-cover 50-state survey, and the content of that Aspen product is available on CCH Impella Connect because of all of this one publisher buying another publisher business that's been going on in the Legal Information Network. If we think back to books, I mentioned that there are a handful of publishers that are responsible for a large number of surveys. No surprise here that the American Bar Association is one of those. From family law to insurance, corporate law to torts, many ABA sections publish state law surveys in their resources. The subject matter is wide and extensive. The Bureau of National Affairs has long been known for its high-quality publications. Several editions of cover-to-cover surveys include things like covenants not to compete, trade secrets, and wrongful termination. The National Consumer Law Center's publications frequently include state law surveys. Most of the things dealing with consumer law are state law based. So they publish titles like automobile fraud, consumer warranty law, foreclosures, and unfair and deceptive acts and practices. NOLO Press is a resource that we have many materials from in the law library. NOLO has legal information for the layperson, and many of their subjects are, again, state law based. So they have state law tables throughout their publications. Some recent examples include dog law, one of my favorite books of all time. For some reason, they don't have cat law. Not quite sure why. Maybe cats are so law-abiding there's no need to regulate their behavior. Anyway, some other examples include Every Tenant's Legal Guide, Neighbor Law, and Your Rights in the Workplace. We've talked briefly about Wolters Kluwer and CCH. They have purchased, Wolters Kluwer now owns Aspen Publishers, which has published things like a state-by-state guide to human resources law, the product liability desk reference, and the state-by-state guide to managed care law. Many of these publications are updated in new editions on a regular basis. So without knowing the title of a specific book from these or other publishers, there are some strategies you can use to find them. We've benefited greatly by Google Books and Amazon, which allow us to peek inside of a book by doing a search. So for both of these, if you use those statutory abbreviations, AND, REV, CODE, STAT, a word or phrase incorporating your subject matter, you can often find pieces of compilations within the book and then identify the book, find out if it's in your library, or request it through interlibrary loan. The web has really done great things to enhance our access to state law sources. So what about more things on the web? How else can we find state law surveys? From the gazillions of pages out on the internet, you now know how to pluck a useful state law survey using those secret search terms. In addition to the statutory abbreviations, effective search terms include states have laws on, or 50-state survey, or state by state. These phrases frequently appear in websites that then precede a state-by-state law compilation. Depending on your research needs, even those without statutory citations can be useful. And remember, if at first you don't succeed, you can try different searches and different search engines. One of the things that many people don't know is that even if a site has been indexed by the spiders for Google or Bing or Plusty or other search engines, those spiders don't necessarily crawl down through every layer of a search engine. They may get the first 3 or 4 or 5 layers, but many times state law compilations are buried deep on a site, buried so deeply that they are in fact invisible to search engines. The search engines also rely on citations from other sources that link to pages on the web. The spiders crawl from one site to another following those links. If no one has yet linked to a state law survey that's buried deep on a website, they may be impervious to detection by search engines. So another approach for finding state law surveys, both on the web or in print, is to know what agency or organization has an abiding interest in that topic. These logos from a number of organizations are on my go-to list for when I have a question about certain topics. They're generally authoritative, reliable, well-organized, and I'm familiar with them because of the state law surveys that they provide. You probably have your own list of favorites, go-to organizations that deal with specific topics and that provide information that you find trustworthy and useful. So what if you don't know the names of specific agencies? The next question would be to say, who cares? What organization follows these issues? What organizations have members who care about these legal issues? How can you identify those associations? These are a number of sources that you can use to identify associations by keyword. The Encyclopedia of Associations is something that many reference librarians know about. It used to be available on Westlaw. It is no longer available on Westlaw. But you can use one of these free sources on the internet to try to identify an organization by topic. Then once you find an organization's website, look for pages that are labeled advocacy, government relations, legal, publications. These are all categories on websites where I've successfully found state law compilations that weren't revealed by general internet searches. So you've done your research and maybe you found several surveys on your topic. That's great, you breathe a sigh of relief, but then you have to evaluate these sources. Are they suitable for your purpose? Have you found a survey that provides just the right level of exquisite detail, or do the details overwhelm the big picture? You might need to create your own survey by picking and choosing elements from the surveys you have located. Too much detail, particularly for a busy legislator who you're perhaps preparing a report for, can be as bad as not enough detail. So you're ready to make your final steps. Consider whether you need to update the research behind the surveys, especially if the survey is several years old, or if you know that legislatures have been busy in amending or creating new laws in the area. Both Lexis and Westlaw, again, provide tools that let you create links to the full text of the laws from a word process document. In Lexis, that's through Shepard's link, and in Westlaw, it's through brief tools. You can run your document through these two services, get links to the full text content on these services, and then review the full text and the status of the legislation on those sites to determine how or if you need to update the survey that you've created. So we reached the end of the presentation, but I'd like to point out that you're welcome to email me for assistance. If you've tried all the tricks and techniques that I've covered today, but you haven't found a useful survey, please feel free to contact me. I'm finding new surveys on a daily basis, and they go into my working database until I send updates to Hein and until we publish the next book. I'm always happy to search the database to share what I've discovered with you. And of course, email works two ways. I'm very happy to hear from you if you've discovered a survey that you'd like for me to know about. I would be happy to receive your email, give you credit in the edition of the next book, and include the survey that you've discovered along with those that I've discovered. Scott, I'm ready to open up the panel to questions now. Thanks very much for your time.
Yes, our speakers will now begin accepting questions over the phone. If you would like to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. If at any time while you are waiting your question has been answered, you may press 1 to remove yourself from the questioner's queue. And if you would like to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad at this time.
Ms. Nyberg, thanks so much for providing these great strategies for us today. This is Mark. One of the things that I wondered, if you've had any positive or negative experiences with Google Scholar.
I have used Google Scholar, not so much for the state law survey research as for other types of legal research I do for people. It's good as far as it goes. It would not be the only source I would use because I have access to a number of commercial, interdisciplinary, and subject-specific databases. But I have used Google Scholar on occasion, and I would certainly say it's one of those things in the Google arsenal that can be very handy. But as I said, it wouldn't be the only thing that I would use.
This is Pepper Sturm from Nevada. You mentioned amicus briefs as good sources for some of these 50-state surveys. What's the best sources to search for those, and how current would they be?
The amicus briefs would generally be as current as the case to which they were submitted or for which they were submitted. For U.S. Supreme Court, I often go to the SCOTUS blog, SCOTUS blog. They do a good job of monitoring both the merits briefs and the amicus briefs in cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. And the ABA, the American Bar Association public education website, has a source called Preview of United States Supreme Court cases, and they often obtain amicus and merits briefs for cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. Often those are available before the Supreme Court has decided a case, and sometimes even before oral argument. You can discover those by a Google or a Bing search, or if you know that there's a topic before the court or has been before the court in the last several years, you can go directly to the ABA site and search that for amicus briefs that might contain state law compilation.
We do have a question over the phone. It is from Susan from Nevada. Please go ahead.
Thank you. What are your top 2 or 3 favorite search engines other than Google?
I've been experimenting with Bing quite a bit, although I have to say that I really dislike their ads about Bing being a decision engine. I'm not a Word fan because Word thinks it knows more about the document I want to create than I do. But I'm, here in Seattle and in William H. Gates Hall, which is named after Microsoft Bill's dad, so I can't say too many bad things about Microsoft products. But I have gotten things I hadn't found in Google with Bing. The other search engine that I use on a regular basis is Plusty, C-L-U-S-T-Y. What I like about Plusty is that it provides groups of related topics to my search over in the left-hand side. So say I'm doing a search with my stat and rev code and a topic like asbestos or whistleblowers. It will group my results by category. So it'll group my results by things from federal agencies, or it'll use common search terms, other terms that appear in the documents that it retrieves, which allows me to be a little bit more efficient about following up on the links than to systematically just go one link after the other. So those are the ones that I've used most often. I've used some of the others, Dogpile and All of the Web. Sometimes I just do some general trolling. But when I'm looking for something specific, those are my top 3, Google, Bing, and Plusty.
Again, if anybody would like to ask a question over the phone, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. There appear to be no further questions over the phone.
I'll mention that I'll be sending a handout to be distributed to participants. It will include a number of the favorite sources for web-based compilations, both those that were on the PowerPoint show and those that are on the external links from Hein Online, just to give you additional ideas about places you can go to find reliable, generally up-to-date compilations on a wide variety of subjects. I've really appreciated the opportunity to share what I know and how I identify these things with other people. I know what it's like to have a small amount of time to turn around a research product, and I'm certainly always looking for shortcuts in my research. So it's been a delight for me to share what I've learned with other people who are in time-pressured situations.
Ms. Nyberg, we thank you so much for sharing your presentation with us today, and we thank everybody for their attention and for their questions. And at this point, I will turn it back to Pepper for some closing comments.
Right, thank you, Mark. Looks like this will have to do it for today. On behalf of RACS, I would like to thank our speaker, Cheryl Nyberg, again, with the University of Washington for her excellent presentation. I would also like to thank Mark Mitchell for moderating the Q&A. And I want to thank you, the participants in today's webinar. We will be posting a copy of this session within a week or 2 on the NCSL website. And as mentioned before, we'll be emailing a copy of Cheryl's handout to everyone who participated. And the copy will have live links to all the websites that she's mentioned. Given the success of this event, we may be looking at future webinars, and we would welcome your comments and suggestions about future topics, as well as how we might improve in the future. So please send us your comments and suggestions to Jeannie Mazur at NCSL, and most of you sent her an email to register for this meeting, so please communicate using that email address. Again, thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you in the future, in person at our professional development seminars or electronically through e-learning opportunities like today's webinar. And thanks again to everyone.
Thank you. That does conclude today's teleconference. We thank you all for your participation. You may disconnect your lines at this time. Have a great day.